Hey guys, it's Jay, your favorite spiritual INTJ, and welcome to Faith Evolved, where I talk about all things spiritual, metaphysical, philosophical, mental health, anything that has to do with the evolution of the soul and the evolution of your faith. That's what we're here to talk about today. So recently, one of my friends, who's also a subscriber to my channel, reached out to me and gave me a really good idea for a video. And by the way, if you're watching my channel, feel free to leave comments down below. And with any ideas you have for any topics you want me to discuss on my channel, I'm open to any and all ideas you have. But anyways, he asked me a series of questions. And, he asked me if you could redo your life all over again, what would you do? How would you get and succeed with women? I'm not sure I can give much insight to that, but I'll try. Still learning that one. But what lessons did I learn from being married? What advice would I give that would help someone be successful in life? What advice would I give to the younger generation? If I can go back in time, what advice, would a 38-year-old me give to a 16-year-old me? How would I survive high school? What advice do I have on mental health? Well, I'm going to try to cover all these today in my video called 15 Lessons I've Learned in Life So Far. First thing is realizing that we all start with nothing. We all start off, when we're born, we're naked, we're screaming, we're crying, we're like, what's going on here? What is this? I'm no longer in the safety of the womb. We're looking around trying to figure out, what's going on. And of course, we're probably overstimulated with all of our senses being, hit at once. So, and it's a process of really trying to learn, who we are, It's a process of discovering what you like and what you don't like, what resonates with you, what doesn't resonate with you, how to negotiate relationships and, communicating with people, getting your needs met, learning how to love others as well. And, finding a balance of that. So really, it's really quite complicated, none of us are given a manual on life. So sometimes, people, they'll have like a midlife crisis, or they'll have a mental breakdown or a dark night of the soul like I did, and realize that we don't really know what the hell's going on. And we've tried so many things and we're still miserable. And so it's okay to reinvent yourself. This is what life is for. If you have like a long distance view of your existence, really, if you believe in spirituality and that we're incarnated on this earth for a mission, for a purpose, and that we're eternal beings, you kind of have an idea that where we're at right now is kind of like starting from scratch, trying to figure out what we want, what we don't want. And so it's okay to try things and experiment with things, and you might fail, you might succeed, but realizing that we all start with nothing really helps lessen the burden of I have to know all the answers. I have to get everything right. Number 2 is realizing that I cannot love others unless I first learn how to receive love for myself. I had to first dare to believe that I am worthy of love and happiness. And it's hard because sometimes all the evidence you have is pointing towards you're not worthy, you're not lovable, that your existence is meaningless. But I really had to stop and think, if I exist in the first place, there must be a reason for my existence. I don't just exist for no reason at all. So that's the first thing. The second thing was, do I exist to feel pain and misery, or do I exist to feel peace, love, and happiness? Number 3 is realizing that things only have the meaning that I give to it. Nothing has any meaning intrinsically in and of itself. For example, this printer here, this bed behind me, that lamp way back there, or those blinds. Those are things that we've created for certain purposes, but in and of themselves, they're just a conglomeration of molecules and atoms put together, or at a more fundamental level, their energy. We decide as human beings to give meaning and purpose to things that we see in our surroundings and things that we create and things that we utilize to try to navigate life, to try to make things easier and more convenient, or what have you. So realizing that, it also applies to, at least in my understanding, it applies to relationships and emotions and things like that. So realizing that, if someone is, upset with me for some reason, this is going to tie into another point I'm going to touch on a little bit later in the video. If someone's upset with me, I can decide whether or not that person is upset with me, or they're projecting their upset onto me, but they're really feeling that in themselves. Number 4 is I stopped apologizing for being myself. Because again, I'm still trying to evolve. I'm still trying to figure out who I really am. Trying to change myself to fit somebody else's expectations or appease somebody else. It doesn't serve me in any way. I'm still trying to figure out what I even want and the things I like and don't like. So I find that it's better to, apologize and ask for permission, and realize I'm allowed to make mistakes. Because everybody else is really doing the same thing. And this leads directly into number 5, which is when I learned to question all the negative thoughts about myself. I told this story before on my channel, but there was a time where I was going through a really deep, dark night of the soul. I was deeply depressed, almost to a point of wanting to die or even being suicidal, full of anxiety and experiencing some of the most brutal mental health symptoms I could ever imagine a human having to experience. And as I was driving down the highway, I was heading to my friend's house, I believe, and a thought occurred to me where I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be happy. Like, I can't even imagine what happiness feels like because I'm so depressed right now. And it shook me to my core. But then the very next thought that I had was, says who? Who's telling me this? And I realized it's only me that's telling me this. No one else is telling me this about myself. So I learned to question my negative thoughts about myself. And that began to bring to light a very powerful tool against, depression and anxiety. And it was at that point that I started improving. I learned to stop feeling guilty about myself. And also daring to believe, like I said before, that maybe I have the power and I have the choice to decide happiness, peace, and joy. And this is going to lead, again, directly into my next point, number 6. And that is, I learned to stop despising the stages of my evolution. There was a point in time where Christianity and the Bible was good enough for me. And it gave me, a frame of reference, a foundation for my faith and my belief in God. But now, with the knowledge that I currently have now, it's outdated and outmoded and, just in my mind, it's primitive compared to the spiritual knowledge I have, the intellectual knowledge, the cosmology and just the structure of the universe. To me, it's like for children, But there are folks that are my age or older that are still deeply entrenched into religion and to Christianity and to, the doctrine of the Bible and, theology and stuff like that. And that's fine. That's where they're at, For me to despise them for where that current stage of evolution they're at and their current spiritual status, that would be the same as me looking back at my past self and shaming him for where he was at. He didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. So it's I learned to not get upset about what helped me evolve previously. Yeah, I'm at a different point now, and maybe 10 years from now, I'll look back at where I'm at now and say, man, I'm so glad I'm not there anymore. And that's okay. You have to allow yourself to evolve. All right, number 7, and this is as close as I'm going to get to giving you any real practical advice on dealing with women. And, it's really, how to deal with myself, because in the end, that's all I can control. I've learned that being married and having kids will bring out the best in you, but also the worst in you. Because realize anybody that I've attracted into my life is there to serve a purpose of my soul's evolution. And clearly, they say opposites attract. That's a bunch of BS. What it's alike attracts. And clearly, whatever path I was on, whatever, my soul's path was, or my spirit's evolution was perfectly aligned to my now ex-wife's path. We attracted each other into our lives. And, of course, there was that time where we loved each other and, we wanted to go out of our way to bless each other. But also all of our, wounds and things that would, trigger each other was right on the forefront, And anything that was, negative in me, if I saw it in her, I would attack it, or vice versa. She would attack what she saw in me that she didn't want or like in herself. So, and it was also the same with the kids, and I think even more so with kids, it seems like they can also trigger the best and the worst in you as well. And it's really hard to deal with because, it forces you to face yourself, And sure, like I said, there's that phase of, maybe you're, I don't know, infatuated with the person, but it's all based on a fantasy of what you want the other person to be for you. And the same for them. And so, as far as getting, like success with getting women, I mean, if you want success in getting women, I mean, I haven't experienced this yet myself because I'm still growing, I'm still learning, but, I would dare to say maybe I should be comfortable with myself first before I try to, find a partner. So, which might be right now why I'm single. And I'm, I've talked to a couple different, females, but, nothing has panned out as far as a romantic relationship goes. But that's okay. I'm okay with that because I know that I'm still growing and I'm still, evolving. And I know that the next relationship I get into is going to be a holy relationship, as the Course in Miracles states, as opposed to, more of a, I believe it calls it a special relationship where, you're in the relationship because they can offer you something, they can provide you something, they can complete you. And getting into a relationship for that is super dangerous because then you end up being codependent. And that's what happened to me. I ended up becoming very, very codependent. And that was very harmful to me, and it almost killed me when I lost that relationship, at least the romantic aspect of it. Thankfully, we're still friends. But, the advice I would give on that is, love yourself first, like I said before, and be okay with your own self, and don't rely on somebody else to make you happy and make you complete, because that's going to be a recipe for disaster. And this, again, as you can see, there's a trend here, leads into number 8, and that is letting go. Like, I learned to let go of, like, all expectations of life, especially of other people. Again, if you're expecting somebody else to complete you and make you happy, you're going to be sorely disappointed because they have their own needs and expectations, and they might not always align with what yours is. So, and I realized that if I let go of expectations, I have less to be disappointed about when they don't pan out. I know it sounds kind of, maybe kind of crass or crude, but I mean, it does help. And that doesn't mean that, you give up all your dreams and hopes. But it means, you can find a way to be happy and content even if somebody else can't be your all and everything. All right, so number 9 is realizing that hurt people hurt people. I realize that, when someone else attacks me, it's really a projection of their pain off of them onto me. And really what they're trying to do is lessen the amount of pain that they feel by blaming somebody else, blaming something outside of them so that they can either feel better about themselves or not feel as bad. Because the amount of shame and pain and guilt they're going through right now is so strong, and their ego is in control, and they really don't know how to, properly face the pain and fear, really, of their sense of lack, their sense of unworthiness. And that's all they can think of is, I'm going to push this push this off of me onto something else, whether it's a person or a thing or, a system, maybe a government or organization, anything to get the pain off of themselves. And then realizing, that I do the same thing. If I get angry, in a traffic jam or there's an accident or something like that, or I get angry when I'm put on hold for half an hour, when I'm trying to call customer service, or I get angry that, my boss is giving me a hard time that I'm not, doing my work to the best of my ability, or I should know more than I do know. I'm realizing that I'm getting upset at a perceived lack in myself. And anytime I attack somebody else or somebody else attacks me, it's fundamentally a cry for love. It's a cry for help. And if I look at all situations that way, as they're just, basically like children who are scared and afraid and frightened by life and feeling like, whatever's happening to them is attacking them and, threatening them. Like, what does somebody need in that situation? They need help. They need advice if they're asking for it. They need prayer. They need something to help them realize it's okay. And once I realize that about myself, it's not like I use it as a way to spiritually bypass or as a way to, justify my poor behavior, but it's to realize that, okay, I understand why I'm doing this. And at a deeper level, this is an opportunity. Which leads into number 10. Every failure is really a lesson. In fact, I believe it's part of the curriculum of life. So, like, if you're presented with a challenge and you figure it out the first time on your own, of course you feel good about it. But if you're presented with a challenge and you work through it and you conquer it, you might even feel better about yourself than if you just, maybe intuitively knew the answer to the question. You feel like you've overcame an obstacle. You've transcended a trial and you've been able to evolve past it. And so it seems to give us a higher sense of accomplishment when we've been able to learn something from a challenge than something that comes easily and naturally to us. And that's part of, I think, the contrast of, living here as human beings versus being perfected, celestial beings or something like that, or, having all the answers. We needed to see that contrast by being here. So if you I've learned that if you try to see everything as a lesson or, some kind of, way to evolve, and that everything is here to help me, I realize it's far easier to not let myself fall into a place of, guilt or shame about it. Number 11, and this is a big one in my opinion, because anxiety at its worst can completely stifle me, or at the least can make me procrastinate on things that I really want to do. Like, for example, maybe I want to be more strict on my diet so I can get in better shape, or go to the gym, or maybe take more time working on my videos for my YouTube channel. And sometimes I feel like I put it off for a week or two. And really what it comes down to is anxiety. Like, maybe the anxiety is, I don't know, I won't stick to it, or it's going to be hard, or it's going to be painful, or it's going to be, I'm not going to have any success with it. It's going to be a waste of my time. But I've learned that, whenever I feel anxiety, I do the opposite of what it tells me to do. So when I was going, and this is really, really crucial for me, especially when I was going through my dark night of the soul, where I would, be very compelled to just close myself off and stay in my room and not do anything. Sometimes I would even go on YouTube or just search the web for, like, how to overcome anxiety, or, just anything I could find to help lessen my pain and my, misery. But I was focused too much on overcoming my anxiety and my depression versus just leaving it behind and doing something that makes me happy, or doing something that's, beneficial to me, or that's showing myself love. So I realized that, especially now after having success with, overcoming anxiety for the most part, and definitely overcoming depression, once you start doing it anyways, like, you realize that it's really the first like 5 or 10 minutes that you really feel any anxiety or any kind of like dread about having to do it. Once you're already doing it, you're like, all right, well, I'm here now, I'm doing it. I'm at the gym, I'm lifting weights, I'm doing my cardio, and before you know it, it's over. And then you feel better about yourself, not just mentally, but physically. You get those release of endorphins. And then I realized, after doing it for a few weeks and months, I find that it felt better to be inconvenienced by having to go to the gym, or eat more healthfully instead of eating junk food than it was to suffer with anxiety and depression. So that was a huge revelation to me. And I stick to that even now that I'm not even struggling, because one of the pitfalls is you can get so used to your better quality of life that you kind of get stuck in that mode where you almost forget about how bad the anxiety and depression was. And you got to be careful there too. You got to be very vigilant to say, I'm going to double down now and keep my disciplines, keep my, better thought processes going so that I don't slip back into those old patterns. All right, so number 12. And that's, what my soul loves never dies. Like who I really am, my soul deep down inside, and all the passions that I have, like, music, playing guitar, singing, recording, playing video games, watching funny YouTube videos, hiking, camping, traveling, even like nerdy stuff that I would be into. Like when I was going through the dark night of the soul, like in my darkest hour, it felt like all the things that I loved about my life and loved about myself and all my passions were gone, just like wiped out. And that was the worst feeling possible. But as I got out of that pit of despair, I realized it was just hidden behind the fear. It never really died. And it came back with a vengeance. Like once I was able to get through it, like all my passions returned to the surface and then some. And I was able to truly appreciate them even more. All right, so number 13 is I cannot convince anyone of anything they're not already looking for. Like if you're, talking to someone, like sometimes I'll have a conversation with someone who's really struggling with something, or they're venting about whatever they're dealing with, or their frustrations or disappointments or even disillusionments with life. And I try to give them advice. At that moment, here's another one for anybody asking for advice for dealing with women. And this is really men too, really, it's a human thing. But, when you try to tell them to calm down and try to give them advice, they almost get like insulted. They get upset with you because like, why aren't you listening to me? I just want you to listen to me. They want to be heard. They don't want to hear your advice. So unless somebody asks you for advice, don't even bother giving it to them, because at that point they may not be even ready to hear it. But if someone asks you for advice, that's a huge honor that they trust you and they feel comfortable around you, that they're actually willing to hear the advice you're willing to give them at that point in time. So I would wait till someone asks you for advice before giving it to them. And that's a challenge for me, especially as a man where you want to fix everything. I'm definitely tempted to give advice all the time, and I've done it before. And most times it doesn't turn out very well, or it's like, yeah, whatever. They're not ready for it. So once they're ready for it, that's when you can, scoop in and be the hero, if you want to think of it that way. So number 14, so this is to those folks that are in that position right now that, someone's trying to help them and maybe they're not ready for it. I realized for myself that everyone that's in my life is a teacher in some way. It might even be a trigger for my traumas, but if I look at it as if they're there to help me get through those traumas, then I can learn a lesson here and I can grow from this. So I realized that my thoughts create reality, and I've learned to stop catastrophizing. Like so quickly we can be like, yeah, Mondays, yeah, they suck, or this always happens to me, or Murphy's Law. Like so quickly we are to jump to the negative instead of the positive. So I learned to just jump to the positive as much as I can. I'm not even close to being perfect with this, but it has helped me immensely. Like this is one of the biggest things in my life. Like learning to look at the positive or see the opportunity in the negative. Like what is that negative trying to teach me? And then if I realize that everything is meant to help me instead of hurt me, and the universe is benevolent instead of malevolent, then the whole perspective shifts. And even the worst thing that could possibly happen to you ends up being the best opportunity for growth. And last but not least, this ties into the last point, is above all, this trusting that God and the universe has my ultimate well-being in mind and at heart. Like I said before, everything is here to help me. So I lied. Here's some advice. Stop looking for the negative in everything and start looking for the positive. And, realizing that just like if you have a child, yeah, they might do some things that annoy the crap out of you. But in the end, you love them, and no matter what mistakes they make, you're always going to be there to help them and love them no matter what, unconditionally. And if we can do that as humans, imagine how much more the universe or God can do that for us. And, just realizing that God is like love, and unconditional love really means unconditional love. Like there's no, feeling of or desire to punish me when I make a mistake. Like what good is that going to do? It doesn't serve any purpose besides to reinforce guilt and shame. But if I realize it's just meant to help me, and at the very worst case scenario, it's a lesson that I need to learn, and maybe I've made the same mistake 50 million times, the lesson is still going to be there to learn, and God in the universe is going to be like, we're just as patient as we were the first time you screwed up. So, and that's how it goes, because, like I said, we're eternal beings, and we have like really... unlimited time to figure this stuff out. Yeah, we're limited as human beings when we have 70, 80, 90 years on Earth, but if you really believe in spirituality and that we're eternal beings, it doesn't matter how long it takes. Maybe it takes you 5 or 10 years just to learn one lesson. So what? You're allowed. You can make mistakes. You don't have all the answers, and I don't either. And that's really is a kind of a 15A/16, if you want to add a little extra for bonus, is being okay with the fact you don't know everything. Like just being humble and be like, I don't have all the answers, but there is one who does, and I trust that one, and that's the Spirit of God living in me. Well, hopefully this has been helpful to somebody out there. And again, I appreciate your comments, and if you're one of my regulars or you're the first time here, I appreciate your subscription, so please hit the subscribe button there. Hit the like button as well if you like this video. Share it on your social media. Spread the word. I appreciate it. And like I said, put your comments below. I try to respond to every single one of them. Thanks, and God bless.